got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome to episode 277 of Dynasty Theory Weekly. As you can see, John Bauer is not here. He's taking the night off, so I'm joined by Dan Lamagna. How's it going, Dan?
Hey, buddy. We're ready to hold down the fort for our boy JB tonight, and then I'm excited tonight, Mitch, man. Like, I'm hoping some good mojo goes into this draft now because you know I'm a fanboy, and my Lakers made this blockbuster trade of the century this week. Hence the Lakers swag tonight. My New York Rangers got a superstar player this week. So, I just need that to carry into football, and one of these guys we're going to talk about tonight, I'm hoping lands on my Dallas Cowboys, so we'll see.
I like it, dude. That trade was insane, and it's just crazy how you can kind of see those trades in Major League Baseball and the NBA. They just never happen in the NFL, especially just how the salary cap's written up. You can't do it. But yeah, that trade was crazy. But to get going, so Daniel Jeremiah came out with his top 50 rookies in this upcoming 2025 draft. And he's a guy that we both respect a ton. Like that's the dude that I followed all the way back when he started. I listened to a lot of what he says because he is the industry insider. He talks to all the teams. He understands that aspect of it even more so than just grading the prospects themselves. So like I was saying, we're just going to get straight into it. And his number 2 overall player, but his number 1 offensive player. Like I said, we're going to go about this dynasty style, right? So we're going to talk about these players and we're going to put the dynasty spin on them. But Travis Hunter, and I'm not sure how many mock drafts you've looked at, Dan. Travis Hunter in a 12-team Superflex league ends up going between the 110 to the 203 because people are really worried about him being more of a cornerback and less of a wide receiver. Well, Daniel Jeremiah, like I said, the guy who talks to teams, who knows things, says, hey, I would really like it if he's more of an offensive player that moonlights on the defense. And so if that ends up happening, how does that make you feel about this wide receiver class as a whole and how he stacks up against Tetairoa McMillan, Luther Burden, Igbuka, just those kind of guys?
Yeah, I mean, a couple thoughts right out of the gate. I love that we picked Daniel Jeremiah's rankings, and we're not just, catching what's out there and looking at it as the Bible, but he is a guy that we respect greatly. And you go over the course of a calendar year as we get ready for the next NFL season. I mean, it's a lot of, hey, who are the good sources out there? And this is rookie season right now, and he is one of the most respected. So before you even put this as a good show idea, I was looking at Daniel Jeremiah's rankings and seeing, hey, who's aligned with where I've been ranking guys and who's not on my radar as high as he should be. And Travis Hunter, the first name we're starting with tonight is a guy that I love. He's a guy that has, since I started this exercise, and I'm a little bit later than you and JB every year because I'm DFS obsessed and really taking a while to get out of the NFL mode. But as I started updating my rankings, I think Travis Hunter's kind of moved the most on mine. I'm a Deion Sanders guy, so I've been following Travis Hunter going back to Jackson State and watching him, and these two-way stars are they're not heard of. But at one point I had him kind of high in my rankings, and I'm like, wait a sec, I'm hearing a lot more DB talk, moved him down, and then I see Daniel Jeremiah's rankings, and I'm like, all right, I got to get him back up there. So I've been a little bit all over the map on this, but right now, man, I have him below Tetairoa McMillan. But if he was drafted to be primary receiver, and we knew that going in, I would definitely bump him ahead of Tetairoa McMillan. And right now, both of them are in, I'd say, my on the back end of a top 24, kind of waiting to see where they get drafted. And I could easily bump them over about 10 guys without blinking. But I need to know more about Travis Hunter. Like I said, right now I have him higher just because to me he's the top wide receiver in this class, where I don't know how a team's going to draft Travis Hunter. No one wants to get as awesome as he is. No one wants to draft a primary defensive back in fantasy. So that right, would be a
exactly.
problem.
And that's the tough thing. A lot of people are down with this draft class. They're like, hey, there's no huge studs in it outside of Jeanty, and it's a pretty mid draft. I like to compare it to the 2023 draft too, where you had Bijan, you had Gibbs. We have those running backs this draft. Bryce Young was the best quarterback coming out, and I'm not sure as a prospect he was that much better than what we're going to see with Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So Travis Hunter being able to move from like everyone's wide receiver 4 to 5 to people's wide receiver 1 or 2, because that's where he is for me. For me, he is the second best wide receiver in this draft class. And I hope he just ends up playing offense. We just won't know. But that's what I'm just trying to say for everybody out there playing Dynasty is while you are trying to accumulate these picks, there's a chance to where those top 8 picks, they all will go up in value if Travis Hunter ends up being an offensive player. And if Daniel Jeremiah is already kind of leaking that out there in February, then I think that's something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's a good sign for us. I look at that graphic you have up there, man, and I see those skinny legs and that thin frame. And like when you jump to the National Football League, like he definitely has a skill set to play at this level. And I'm confident he's going to be a good player. But you talk about every single down, the amount of snaps he was getting at Colorado, you can't replicate that in the NFL. I mean, Primetime was a shutdown corner, and he'd get a occasional play at receiver here and there. And that's what we Deion Sanders was that a guy on my deep bench in fantasy way back in the day. That's what we don't want out of Travis Hunter if we're drafting him really high in a rookie draft. But those stats, his ability, Daniel Jeremiah's early tip, again, I like to draft a little bit later, Mitch, as far as, startups, rookie drafts, get as much information as I can. So hopefully by time most of us draft, we'll have a little more information to go on.
Yeah, and this stuff's pretty important now because Sleeper's already adding rookies into their draft database, right? So if you go to do a startup draft now, there's a chance to where people be like, hey, let's have rookies included. If Travis Hunter's there, you're going to have to, make your case for if you think he's that offensive player, that defensive player. But moving on. So Daniel Jeremiah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just one more last thought, and maybe this will be like a teaser till we get to Tet. So we'll come back to this. But there's a big teardrop at that receiver position. So knowing where Travis Hunter goes is a big difference because I know where I'm drafting Tet. That's my mind's pretty much made up. So I look forward to talking more about that when we get there.
No, I'm in complete agreement there. So Ashton Jeanty is the number 3 overall player. It's pretty much where Bijan was, where Jeremiah had him in the 2003 draft. Dude's an absolute stud. For anyone, who's living under a rock and doesn't know, he is as a running back prospect, he's just as good as Bijan, Barkley, whoever that best running back prospect you want to bring up. He's that good. You could see on the screen, he had 2,600 yards in 14 games. Even against Penn State, it wasn't his best game, but everyone saw the run to where he broke like 8 tackles. Like the dude, it's so hard to bring him down. And I think his skill set fits so well in today's NFL because he's a really good pass catcher. They didn't ask him to catch the ball in this past season, but the previous season, he caught a lot of balls because they needed that more. So he has the skill set. He has everything. So my question for you when it comes to Dynasty, Ashton Jeanty's walking into the NFL in Dynasty probably as a top 18 prospect overall, right? So that's a little bit after Gibbs probably, but right around where Saquon is. Are you willing to pay up to get that? Because it's probably going to cost you, if you're going to draft him, it's going to cost you the 101. If you wait until after the draft, it's going to cost you at least 2.5, 3 first. Is that something you're willing to do for him, knowing that there's Bijan already, there's Jahmyr Gibbs already, there's Saquon Barkley? We have a few of these guys in the NFL now. How do you feel about him compared to those other guys?
I mean, is this before or after he gets drafted to Dallas, Mitch?
Yes.
All right,
So
after
real quick. I think no matter what, he is going to get a smash landing spot because he's going to go in the top 15 picks. And just the chance that he ends up getting like the Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs scenario to where David Montgomery's there. I don't even think Montgomery was there. Well, DeAndre Swift, whoever it was, I just think that he is so landing spot safe that I don't even care where he goes in the top 15 because he's going to go to a good team.
Yeah, I'm with you. Right now, I already have him at a minimum of number 7 overall and nice. Overall running backs with room to go up. I'll be a Cowboy homer if that's the case, and he'll skyrocket up. I think to your point, no matter where he lands, I mean, he should get a pretty good spot and a great role, but we'll see. But he's in that Bijan type prospect. Bijan, I like a little more than Gibbs, but Gibbs got the incredible landing spot. And when I go into a startup, like I want Bijan and or Gibbs, depending on where I draft. I remember last year there was I'd get Bijan, mid-late first, and then you'd go around and Gibbs still had a little bit of value where he'd slide to you. But I want at least one of those two. Now, if I don't get either of those two, I want Ashton Jeanty. I think you get that one elite stud running back. And I guess the best way to sum it up is I'm really high on the combination of talent, position scarcity, and youth. Same reason we talked about Brock Bowers, and I was so high on him last week. Like when you give me those three things, an uber talented guy at positions that's scarce, and I'm getting him really young. So I'm going to get a good chunk of his career where, barring no serious injury, and he projects out and does as well as his projection, you're set, Mitch, for like 10 years at the running back position. So that's what I want to land at and be set. So to me, he's Bijan or Gibbs 2.0. This year's rookie class, I mean, to me, he's 101. And am I willing to give up a lot for him? More likely than not. I don't want to overpay if I already have like the Bijan and Gibbs on my roster and I need to be built different. But I will pay a decent price to get him.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I do believe in the hero RB approach to where you have that one dominant young stud, just fill out everybody else behind him. Like if you have Gibbs and then you walk in with even like a Stevenson or something like that. Stevenson's pretty low, but that kind of back, I think it gives you such a strong team build because you just have that guy you don't have to worry about. And a big thing with, like, I just keep going back to how people are really down on this draft, but this is the number 3 overall player for Daniel Jeremiah. The next player we're going to talk about here in a minute is the number 5 overall player in the draft. So I'm just not really, it's not the 24 draft where you had generational Marvin Harrison, generational Caleb Williams, right? You don't have that, but you have really darn close outside of the quarterback and wide receiver position.
Yeah, because if you don't get a Jeanty in this year's draft and you need a running back, I mean, look at the next guys like Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall. Like we just look at the whole Dynasty running back landscape. Hey, love to have those guys. But boy, I loved them a lot more 4 or 5 years ago, having them where not like you're getting Jeanty prime right out of the gates. And then if you miss on those guys too, now the risk just keeps growing, So whether you're going to ride Jeanty into the sunset, where you want to trade him later on, his value is protected for such a long time.
Yeah, not to go off on the whole running back tangent, but that's why I think we're going to see Amarian Hampton, Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson. We're going to see them probably in the top 10 of running back rankings just because there's really no one else to put ahead of them at this point. Redraft wise, you can make a case for like a Josh Jacobs, someone like that. But I mean, everyone else is getting old and there's no one really young. Look at Kyron's value. Kyron is amazing. People want to discount him all the time because of that draft pedigree coming in. So I really think if we get some good draft stock with these running backs, that we might be talking about Dynasty in a little bit of a different aspect when it comes to the running backs moving forward.
Yeah, and I look forward to future episodes diving into those running backs. We may, depending on time, touch on another one tonight. But last year's draft, we felt overall wasn't as deep. We warmed up to it a little bit more as it got close, draft time. But boy, those Tyron Tracy's and Bucky Irvin's late, like we gobbled them up in the 3rd round of rookie drafts. Just think what we could do with these guys. But I think there's a big difference when you're talking the elite Bijan Barkley type that Jeanty is versus other backs that we're going to love to have on our Dynasty rosters, but they're not that elite, dude.
Agreed. Fully agree. So like I alluded to, this is the number 5 overall player, the 3rd offensive player for Daniel Jeremiah. It's Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren played behind Theo Johnson last year, just came on the scene this past year, was a flat out stud, over 100 receptions, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. Dude is fantastic. So when we compare him, we're going to talk about another tight end really soon. Heads up, this is a very good tight end draft class. With Tyler Warren, you're getting the big athletic guy. Like you're getting that when athletes come from Penn State, you know what you're getting, right? They draft a specific type of player. And like, I love Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson showed out a little bit before he got injured. So I was really, really happy getting him late in drafts. Now, Tyler Warren, he's coming in. He's probably going to be a top 10, top 15 draft pick in the NFL. How high are you willing to draft him? Let's say it's a 0.75 tight end premium super flex league. Are you going up to the 103 to get him? Because we just know how the tight end landscape is, because after you have, just off the top of my head, Bowers, you have Laporta, you have McBride, and I guess Hawkinson. Hawkinson's like number 4. So Tyler Warren probably walks in number 5 at worst, but with a lot more hype than what Hawkinson's going to have.
Yeah, and I think I am, Mitch. Maybe a little bit roster dependent. I think we're going to have a good quarterback conversation coming up here on whether we're valuing, undervaluing, overvaluing quarterbacks. But if I could get away without needing that quarterback, and we know, hey, it's Jeanty's off the board. So if it's Jeanty, Cam Ward, and then is it Tyler Warren time? How high are you on these receivers that are coming in? There are things to talk about, but when you have Daniel Jeremiah, who is not like Joe Twitter, that is hyping up this guy with a Gronk-like comparison, I'm listening. Like, I don't think Daniel Jeremiah lightly throws a Gronk comparison, and that is what we want to draft. We want to draft the next Gronk at this tight end position. And right now, for me, going into next year, there's Brock Bowers we talked about in the previous episode, top of the class. I have McBride too, and then I'm looking to see where Tyler Warren goes, Mitch. I would probably have Laporta 3. The only concern I have on Laporta was Detroit showed a hand last year that if JMO's producing at a high level, they could go a couple different directions on how they utilize their weapons. So again, Laporta came on strong late last year, but that was a little bit after JMO got in a little bit of trouble, had a little lull, and then he got hot again. And we have a new OC that'll be coming in Detroit, so there'll be a little bit of transition. But to say that he's even in this conversation so early with a Laporta says this is a guy you want to take high. And I, after those guys, man, the tight ends are either aging or just all the same. Like it's just all, hey, give me 3 of them to feel good about my tight end position. So I would roll the dice. Like right now I have them as, in that mid-range, and it really just depends on how I'm building the roster, whether I'm willing to be more aggressive. Like you said, 0.75, that might have me leaning a little bit towards 1 or 2 other guys. If it's that full tight end bonus, I got a good feeling I'm going to be extra aggressive.
So anyone who looked at tight end rankings on like KTC, Tucker Kraft was like the tight end 7 when the season ended. PPR wise, I don't have, because premiums are all different, right? But just straight PPR, he was 9.6 points average per game on the season. And that made him get up to tight end 7, because people are like, well, he's young and in a good offense, so we'll rank him as 7th. So I think Tyler Warren is so safe that he is actually a better pick. Like, we brought up Travis Hunter, right? I love Travis Hunter. I think he's going to be a very good wide receiver in the NFL. In premium leagues, I'm going to end up taking Tyler Warren over him, just because even if Tyler Warren isn't good, look, people want Dalton Kincaid for 2 years, and Dalton Kincaid hasn't produced yet. And people are still willing, you know what? He's still tight end 8, whatever. And so I just think Tyler Warren is extremely safe compared to other prospects in this draft.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. Even if he doesn't quite meet that ceiling that we're hoping for, and we do believe he could get to, man, like Tucker Kraft, you mentioned being good. Like, you could pick any tight end in that second tier that somebody likes or has some more shares of, but the consistency year to year or through the course of a year is just so, hey, I could find that production. I could find a few different ways to compete with you. I'm not worried about it. At a minimum, Tyler Warren, I think, is going to be as good, but most likely better than all those guys.
Cole Kmet is going to be a top 10 Dynasty tight end come June. Like, we all know he's going to get pushed up. Everyone's going to say, hey, Ben Johnson loves the tight end. So that's all it takes, is just a little bit of hope in these But moving on to another tight end who is flat out the forgotten guy in this rookie landscape, because Daniel Jeremiah has him as the 7th overall player. 7th overall. And people are like, you know what? I kind of like him in the early second. Like, I'm sorry. So you brought up the Gronk comparison. I love that. To me, Colston Loveland, like if you're going to compare him to one of the top ones, he is like the George Kittle type. He is just flat out a tight end. He is going to block. He is going to do everything needed. His wingspan is unbelievable. His stats were pretty awful this year. He only had 56 for 582. I'll go back real quick. Joey, Tyler Warren pretty much doubled his stats, but Michigan didn't have a quarterback. Like, right. Dude, who they were running out there was awful, and he was still able to produce. He was still playing every single game. He did everything that he could. But one thing we on Dynasty Theory like to talk about this quite a bit. Last year we talked about in that draft class, this is how you fix your quarterback room. Go in with 2 first-round picks. You could fix your quarterback room, and you don't have to worry about it for the next 5 years. We have draft classes that you could just look at and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how you fix your tight end room in Dynasty this year. So you have these two. You have Harold Fannin. You have a few other guys. Sorry, I'm skipping out on them right there. But you have like 5 tight ends that are absolutely fantastic. But Colston Loveland is, like I said, the number 7 overall in this class. So for me, this is what I'm going to do. I'm using this draft class to build out my tight end room.
So some interesting thoughts there. And I see where you're going with this. I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate and just to get some more clarity in what you mean by fixing the tight end room. Now, Michigan's kind of like becoming like Iowa light for tight ends. I think I did mention Colston Loveland when we were just skimming through tight ends in one of our past episodes. If you go back there, he was number 2 on my board. So I like that. Now, I never imagined Daniel Jeremiah ranking him this high. And I don't know what that speaks to this class, or, you know, how he's that high on him. But it's kind of tricky. So does he fix the nailing draft on a roster where we don't have an elite tight end, Mitch?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have him. I think he fits in that description of, hey, if I don't have the upper echelon elite guy, I want to get 2 to 3 tight ends on my roster that are going to give me good points, give me some consistency. But like, I see this guy being in the next Tucker Kraft, Pat Freiermuth category because there's a little bit of not like blocking, like his blocking game, you know, that little bit of lack of bulk as a run blocker that could take him off the field in some scenarios or have him develop in a little bit. Like, so I don't see him as like instant star at the tight end, which we know how rare has been, really. I mean, we're talking about like McBride, Laporta, Bowers, like that's it, other than the old heads like Kittle and Kelsey and Andrews, you know, Hawkinson's maybe in between all that. So to me, Colston Loveland, I like him. I want him on my dynasty rosters, Mitch. I'm not quite sure where he's going to go right now. Like, to me, I thought before Jeremiah pumped him up, this was going to be a guy I was going to get in the 3rd round and be really excited happy about. Now it's like, all right, I think he's a second rounder. I think, you know, but.
So
what do you think?
I drew a blank. It was Mason Taylor. That was the tight end I was trying to think of. But
okay, yeah, LSU.
Colston Loveland is going to be a top 20 NFL draft pick. That's where he's going in every mock draft. A lot of times he ends up going to the Chargers, which actually makes sense. But, you know, it's that Michigan connection. So who knows if it actually happens? It's just the easy it's the Dallas Cowboy GNT pick. It's what you do. But good dude, Colston Loveland, no joke. This is, if anyone out there just wants to listen to me for just 1 second, he is an extremely good tight end prospect. He's not kind of good. He's not, hey, he might get a little bit overdrafted. Like, the dude is fantastic. If Tyler Warren wasn't in this draft class, we would be talking about Colston Loveland being a top 5 super flex rookie pick. But since we have Tyler Warren, we're discounting Loveland a little bit. That's just my take. I'm very firm. That one is, I'm not going to get off that. I don't care what is said after this, for the rest of the draft process. Colston Loveland to me is a top 8 player in this draft as far as rookie picks go.
I'm gonna keep grinding in the film room there and see how much more I love get on to Loveland as we get closer to draft day. Like if he is top 20 and we have 2 tight ends going the top 20 of this NFL draft, and he landed somewhere with Justin Herbert, who's only got one reliable receiver in McConkey right now. Holy cow! He's easily going to plummet.
Can you imagine
up the rankings there? I just see the difference of elite and very good. I guess that's where I'm at right now. And hey, we all want a very good tight end in fantasy, so I'm not knocking it. And I'm not, like I said, I agree with you, Mitch. It's just a matter of how much does he fix that tight end room. I still have to see a little bit more.
Okay,
that's going to be a fun one. It's nice to have those two. There are a few other guys, like you talk about this draft fix, and you mentioned Mason Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
I think Terrence Ferguson's another guy that's been getting a little bit of hype. So there's some good guys that I think are going to get into that mix, and we need them desperately in tight end and Dynasty.
Without a doubt. Okay, moving on. So I have a little bit of a take with the whole quarterback situation here, right? So Cam Ward's number 10. Shedeur Sanders is number 11 for Jeremiah. Cam Ward, huge, strong arm, pretty athletic, not extremely athletic. Shedeur Sanders is just that perfect pocket passer who is going to stay in the pocket for a little bit too long. He's going to take sacks, but he has the arm, and how well he processes the field isn't something that we see coming from a lot of college quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's what I really want to hit on with this is I know these guys aren't Jaden Daniels type athleticism. And so everyone really wants to downplay him, but we don't see senior quarterbacks coming in with all of these college starts. Like normally these guys are coming in anymore with like 17 to 20 starts. And that's what they have. Dude, Shedeur Sanders has been playing college football for years. Like I'm not worried about him week 1. Is he going to have issues as a rookie? Yes. But is he more ready than most rookies we see coming out? Without a shadow of a doubt. So for me, I think these quarterbacks are really, really discounted further than what they should be.
Yeah. In my notes here, man, I agree with you. Like I'm not sure. Just give some comparisons, I don't know if the Titans are bluffing this year, but they've given Will Levis every chance to be the guy. And, there's some things like, hey, they're not definitely taking a quarterback. We're keeping all options open. They may just be bluffing, but they did give him every chance to be the guy. I think we could come up with a bunch of other examples, Daniel Jones for another one, again, given every chance. And there was a lot of productive dynasty years. Maybe it didn't end up well. But these are 2 guys that, although their comps are maybe, less than a Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy at certain points, there's enough talent there that I think they are going to be the guys somewhere and give a few good years of dynasty with potential to be quarterbacks that help us for a long time. How good they're going to be, Cam Ward, I'm a little curious, what's going on between the ears there. I mean, you and JB will probably talk me off the horse at some point to get me like away from this, sitting out the second half of the game. Like I'm still bothered by him not playing in the second half of a bowl game. That'd be like JB saying, "Hey guys, I need to be there for my family tonight, but I'm going to come on the pod because I can set the most minutes record for podcast appearances." And then he leaves us partway through the show. Like, are you really there for your family? Like, so Cam Ward making that business decision after he took care of his own business. And I know there's mixed opinions of that. I've seen that in our DD Discord there, man, where it's like, hey, guys have sat out bowl games. There's been a couple other one-offs where situations have happened. But, man, I go out there with my brothers, and I just decide, hey, I took care of my record. You guys are on your own the rest of the way. That don't sit well for me. And I think Daniel Jeremiah even mentions, hey, protecting the football. He could be turning it over. They got to rein him in a little bit. Hey, we all love Jameis Winston, but he can't seem to stay on the field because he keeps turning that ball over. So I'm in on Cam Ward. Same thing with Shedeur. He does it. He takes way too many sacks. Yeah. But, man, I've also seen him do some good things with his feet and make some plays and hang in there a lot extra long. hey, if we put an O-line around him in the NFL where he doesn't have to take so many sacks, I think he's a guy that's been brought along well. He's well coached. He's meant for this limelight. I like them both. I'll definitely be drafting them both. I think they belong early in the draft to solidify quarterback positions.
To me, when I was watching their tape, the biggest thing is with Sanders is he stays in the pocket. He manipulates the pocket quite a bit. So like I immediately fell in love with that because that's something that, the Mannings talked about this past season to where they're like, you gotta be able to move within the pocket. Like Joe Burrow is the king of it. He could just slide, move, make little adjustments, but not get hit because of it or not get hit hard because of it. It's my one issue with Cam Ward. Cam Ward does not like to stay in the pocket. If he can bail out, he'll bail out. He's not bailing out looking to run. He's just bailing out to try to get a cleaner window to throw to. And there's times where it's like, dude, just stay in the pocket for like 2 more seconds and it probably would have worked out. But I mean, he had a great year. So here's me in Utah, telling what this athlete should be doing in the pocket. But just comparing the two, that's like my only thing I worry about with Cam Ward is a little bit of happy feet, right?
Because it's not going to get easier in the National Football League.
Exactly.
When the different, more complex looks are there and the offensive playbooks are bigger and there's a lot more thinking and a lot more going on. I think you just bring up respectable concerns of saying, hey, how's this going to translate at the next level? So I do love your mention of liking Shedeur's footwork. Hey, you saw Baker Mayfield's progress over the last couple of years and where he's coming to his own. I watched him a little extra closely this year. His footwork is just awesome in that pocket. There are breakdowns. He just manipulates, buys just enough time to make a play happen. So it'll be interesting to watch where these guys go and hopefully, add to that quarterback landscape.
Without a doubt. And for anyone listening, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. But if you're watching this, I'm sure you're already following Ray's normal YouTube channel over at Ray GQ. The reason why I bring this up before I'm switching slides, Dan doesn't even know I'm doing this. Ray had a mock draft that he just did after the Senior Bowl. He was there. They were there in Mobile. Him, Scott, and Shane were there. Sound like they had a great time. Jackson Dart, Jets, 7th overall. Does that change kind of how you're feeling about this class if you get there's a strong chance to where you'll get at least 3 top 10, top 12 guys?
I love the opportunity to get a third quarterback in that first round, which we are, we haven't been certain we're going to have. And I think actually Mel Kiper was one of the guys I saw early on Jackson Dart. So I'm like, okay, Mel likes him. Let's just see what happens Senior Bowl week. He had a great week of practice from everything that we heard. A lot of NFL teams, some are saying those rumors are that they like him more than Cam Ward or Shedeur, so we're hearing some of that. Then I watched the Senior Bowl and I saw some things I liked. I saw some things that I'm like, you need to clean that up before we get to the National Football League, protect that football, please. But there's some tools there. And teams are desperate for quarterbacks. We're going to have upcoming episodes of Dynasty Theory where we're going to be breaking down this quarterback landscape, especially beyond we get into free agency and we see where these landing spots are. Hey, he could fill one more puzzle piece, but that would take one chair out of that game of musical chairs of some free agents that are on our Dynasty rosters right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, hey, Kirk Cousins going to be a starter. He's going to be a starter. What if he's not? What if that was just a straight, people just don't have faith, in him anymore? I think that's a very strong chance of that happening, that no one's really will. I think there's a stronger chance that Kirk Cousins is not a starter than Sam Darnold not being a starter. So I think Sam's going to start before Kirk Cousins does.
Because you got to trade something just to get Kirk Cousins.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if I'm an NFL team, I'm like, big difference in just being on the open market and getting them at a bargain.
Without a doubt. Okay. So you talked about him earlier. Your number 1 wide receiver, Tetairoa McMillan, number 15 overall for Jeremiah. So to follow John's line of thinking, kind of had this question here when we thought he was going to be on the show. He loves to throw everything into buckets, right? Here's one aspect, a couple aspects you could be. How do you see, after watching Tet's tape, do you think he's more of the Mike Evans, flat out dominant outside guy, and that's where he's going to live, or a little bit more of the Drake London across the middle, doing that sort of things, or I just want to put it out there. I don't think he is. I'm just putting it out there. Is he a N'Keal Harry type prospect to where he dominated in college? Doesn't have the top speed. People comped him to AJ Green for a long time. Like, sorry, he's not AJ Green. AJ Green was just flat out faster than what McMillan is. And so how do you see him falling in today's NFL?
I thought this was a great question here, JB's Buckets. There's a scenario for all three. The only way I see the scenario of him busting, is what don't we know? There's always, you don't know what's going on between these ears. You'll hear me say that a lot. Is there an issue at work ethic? Is there, hey, we see it happening in George Pickens right now, right? We're all thinking, hey, this guy had number 1 draft pick ability. It was an injury. And he still hasn't grown up and he's not living up to his potential. But I haven't heard that. I have no reason to believe that. It would just have to be something that we don't know. And we normally start finding that out when guys slide in drafts, so certain reports come out, those kind of things. But I have him in the Drake London category. And that's exactly where I'm going back to the 22 draft and drafting him just like I did Drake London. Now that class was a lot better of a wide receiver class. I felt a lot more star power, deeper. I had London that year as my 1A. I save our Dynasty rookie rankings that we do every year, Mitch. and I had London right before Garrett Wilson. I had 1A, 1B. They're both stars. I think Garrett Wilson's maybe turned out to be a little bit better. He has, been more of the elite Dynasty guy. It took Drake London a while to get a quarterback and kind of come into his own, but we saw him come into his own this year. And I just think there's a teardrop in that receiver class after Tet and Travis Hunter. I just think they're different kinds of receivers, more slot guys, more, role guys, but they have a little bit more questions versus being sure thing potential superstars. So I love Tet, man. I'm taking him in that London class. My wide receiver 1, 4-5 overall. I love how he finds the ball. I think that's where I look at him. So his size, he just seems to glide. He accelerates after the catch. He protects the ball pretty well. He high points, but I love how he high points the ball and gets open. And hey, if he's catching those contested balls and he's catching those drags across the middle and he's got that size for a slant, he's doing a lot of things I need him to do as a wide receiver in the NFL, man. And so I was crossing my notes a little bit, talking about guys that glide and accelerate. So that was my Amari and Hampton notes. But I love watching Tet. I think I look forward to seeing where he goes. Number 1 by far.
Yeah, I mean, his wingspan is insane. When you're watching him in college, because the athletes in the Pac-12 at quarterback aren't quite the same as they are in the NFL, right? He just dwarfs them. He is just bigger and stronger than they are. And so, I think to me, I'm willing to put it out there. I think he's going to be closer to Mike Evans. I think that's how we're going to see him soon. I think he can be a top 6 to 7 NFL wide receiver by, landing spot dependent. Because, my biggest worry is the Raiders are like, screw it. We're going to take him at 5th overall and we're worried about the quarterback later. Then I'm like, then what do I do? Right.
How many talented receivers do we see that either take a while to produce or it takes a different landing spot because, hey, you name it, quarterback issues, O-line issues, offensive coordinator issues. They're the things we hope don't happen. And that's the difference of, that fantasy ceiling there. But I think if you're going into a draft, how do you pass him up? How do you pass up the chance of getting that much talent and production? I can't see anyone other than Travis Hunter of you gambling and saying, hey, I'm going to roll the dice on this guy. I think you would just regret it. And if for some reason he busts, that's beyond our control. But I don't know. Right there with Drake London, in my view.
It's so funny because the Eagles are in the Super Bowl now, and everyone, if anyone talks to normal NFL fans that aren't, deep diving into DFS and Dynasty and listening to, Dynasty theory in middle of February, they're just normal NFL fans. I've had people at work ask me, so is Saquon really that good? How come he wasn't that good with the Giants? And I'm like, no, he was always that good. It's just the Giants are terrible. So it goes back to your point, how many of these players just don't live up to their potential, and it's not to their fault of their own. but because they just get put in a horrible situation and they could try as hard as they want. Sometimes the NFL is just like, yeah, this isn't going to work out.
Yeah. And you look at the Giants situation, whether, sometimes it's not even necessarily the coach's fault. Like we watched that Hard Knocks and they showed where they wanted to allocate their dollars spent and how many teams in the NFL just refused to allocate those dollars to the running back position. And I get that in theory, but there's running backs and then there is Saquon Barkley.
Yes.
There's running backs and then there's Derrick Henry. They are built differently. So if you have the infrastructure like the Eagles do, like the Ravens do, man, spend those dollars. My Cowboys really blew it, I believe. And hey, maybe it wasn't going to be their year anyway because of injuries. But if you go into that year and you didn't have those injuries in the beginning, why would you not get one of those running backs instead of paying Brandon Cooks $5 million? It wasn't that expensive to get Derrick Henry, who wanted to play in Texas. He's got a home out there. It made sense. So that's my little rant, man, on the running backs, whether it's receiver or running back. As fantasy owners, we got to be aware of those situations they're getting into.
Yeah, no, dude, it makes complete sense. Well, for the 277th time, it's just you this time. What's your final thought?
Final thought tonight, Mitch, man. I know we didn't get to all the guys on our list tonight, but I'll just throw one name that was on our list of just the closing thought. We'll get more into it in a future episode. But Amarian Hampton, I already have him top 24 overall at the running back position.
He is so fun to watch. Like, I love watching Jeanty, but I live in Utah, so I see all of Jeanty's games anyways, right? Yeah. Didn't see a lot of Hampton until I started watching tape. Dude's fun. Like, there are some backs to where you just watch play football and you're like, holy crap, I want him on my team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I watch his film. He's got the size. He does glide and accelerates, and he's quick for his size. His vision's really good, and he takes these great angles. And like, there was so much I liked out of his film. He's a guy that I think these we hit tonight with the big names. Based on Daniel Jeremiah's rankings. Hey, we get to a rookie draft. To me, Hampton's the next guy that's going to go in there. So keep an eye on him. He's named that maybe, other than our DD Fantasy Network, who has been talking about him. I know Ray's been talking about him for a while. He's helped get him on the radar a lot earlier. But maybe the mainstream, fantasy people who are a little slower haven't seen as much as him. Definitely check this guy out. And hey, tune in for future episodes, man. We're going to be diving into this entire rookie class to make sure we get our listeners ready for their next drafts.
Without a doubt, there's a lot of people in my Dynasty leagues who haven't shown up. Like, I'm trying to get them to transfer from MFL over to Sleeper, and I can't even get them to click the link. So there's a lot of people who just aren't quite diving in yet, but I think after the Super Bowl, everyone is going to start diving back in. So like I said, for the 277th time, thank you for watching Dynasty Theory. Please join the community at ddfantasyfootball.com. The Discord is amazing. John's tiers are awesome. If you join the Heisman level, you could get into the voice chat. We have one of those going all the time. It is fantastic. You could get in there and talk to all of us. We could help you with whatever. But thank you for watching the show, and we'll see you in a week.